Chapter 6, Section 5 is entitled Solving Percent Problems. All right, so we've kind of taken a tangent away from this, but we left a few sections and percents here that now we need to go back and pick up. And this is one of them, and 6, 7 is the other one. The reason we took a tangent off here and skipped these sections originally is because they really require a knowledge of solving equations, which is what we got in Chapter 12, Unit 12. Now that we've done that chapter, we can come back and pick up these last few concepts here that require that knowledge of solving equations so we can be successful. So in this section, we're solving percent problems, problems involving percents here. Now, some things you need to know here. What we're going to be doing is translating these statements into a mathematical equation there and then solving that equation. So you need to know how some of these things translate here, which is what you see in red in the upper right corner of the screen. When you see the word is in a statement, that's going to translate out to an equal sign. When you see the word of in a statement, that's one you should already know. Of means multiplication, and pretty much all these questions somehow, some way, are going to have multiplication in them. So we're going to see that a lot. It means we're going to be solving a lot with division because, of course, when we solve an equation, we do the opposite, and the opposite of multiplication is division. And then you're going to have a what statement. The what statement is going to show up a couple different ways. It's either going to say what number or what percent. But regardless of which one it is, that's going to indicate the presence of your variable. So that's what you're going to change into your variable. So you'll translate that statement directly into an equation in the order they give it to you. And then after you translate that statement, solve the resulting equation, which will help you find whatever it is you're looking for based on the question. It'll either say what percent or what number. So let's look at the first one. What percent of 40 is 25? Now, as you can see, we've crossed out pretty much all of their work here. Again, we're going to translate this. So let's go piece by piece. The first thing here in question 1a says what percent. Well, again, the what percent statement there, or what anything, what statement, doesn't matter which one, that's your variable. So the what percent, that's going to be my variable. So that's why the first thing I wrote here was n. Then the next thing I see is the word of. Of is going to translate to multiplication, so I wrote a times sign next. The next thing in the statement is 40, so 40 is going to translate as 40, of course. Is the next word in the statement. That's going to be equals, so I have is, I wrote an equal sign, and 25 is 25. Literally in order, I translated that piece by piece, and you're going to use that same approach in every single question here. Well, as you can see, now what we have here, when I'm asked to find what percent of 40 is 25, I'm really solving n times 40 equals 25. That's an equation. We're going to use all those rules that we use for solving equations. So I'm going to keep the variable on the left, keep the number on the right. That means 40's got to move because it's a number and it's on the wrong side. Well, to move 40, I'm going to have to do the opposite, of course. So I'm going to go ahead and divide across by 40 here. And so I'm going to take 25 and divide by 40, and that's going to equal n, which, as you can see, is shown all the way down here. We skipped a lot of lines. But when we did that, we got 0.625. Now, not quite done. Why are we not quite done? We're not quite done because the question says what percent. And this technique will vary based on the type of question you have. But because it says what percent, that implies that they're looking for an answer that's a percent. Makes sense? So what we want to do now is take this decimal answer and change it to a percent, so we're actually finding the percent. Well, that requires us to take this decimal, as I said, and change it to a percent. How do we do that? Well, as we wrote in over here, we move the decimal twice to the right and add a percent sign, which is something we've already done this year. So when I jump this twice to the right and add a percent sign, I get 62.5%. That's my solution. If we put it back in the question, that means 62.5% of 40 is 25. All right, here's part B. 15 is 25% of what number? So again, let's go ahead and translate this. 15 is going to pop out as 15, as you can see. The next thing is the word is. Well, is, again, if you recall from the red that we had in the upper right corner in the last slide there, came out as equals. 25% comes out as 0.25. Now, I can write 25% here, but if you don't have a percent key on your calculator or don't know how to use the percent key on your calculator, that isn't going to help you. So what did I do? I did the same thing I always do whenever I work with a percent in a question, is I changed it to a decimal. 0.25. Remember, you get rid of the percent sign and move the decimal twice to the left. Of is the next word. Well, of means multiply. Then what number? That's your variable. So that's going to be your n. So I've got 15 equals 0.25 times n. And I'm going to go ahead and solve that equation. Now again, all that stuff that's up top here got wiped out. So we're not going to solve it like they are. We're just going to solve this equation. We know how to do this. Once we translate it, it's easy. Now, if we're looking at this question, you know that the first thing I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to flip this around, because where is the variable? The variable's on the right, but the variable's supposed to be on the left. So I'm going to invert this and change it to 0.25n equals 15. Okay, so keep the variable on the left, keep the number on the right. 0.25 has got to move. That's the one thing we didn't check off. How do I move it to the opposite side? Well, I do the opposite. So I'm going to go ahead and divide by 0.25 all the way across, which is exactly what you can see they did down here. All right, when we do the 15 divided by 0.25, that's going to help me figure out what n is, which is my answer. 15 divided by 0.25 is 60. Now, the question is, do I change this one like we did in the last one? The answer is no. The reason the answer is no is because the question just says, what number? It's not asking me for a percent. So if it's not asking me for a percent, I don't have to change it to a percent. It's just asking me for a number. I have a number. So this is a good answer here. So we're going to stop that at 60. Fill it back into the question. 15 is 25% of 60. All right, so now all of a sudden they switch the technique. Now what they're doing is exactly what we've been doing in the last two questions. The thing is, the book tries to teach you some formulas to remember all the different ways you can solve these equations. Instead of learning another formula and another equation, let's use the formulas and the equations we already know and not make this any more complicated. So we're just going to keep solving these just like we did the first one. And you can see all those crossouts that we had, those crossouts are gone because they're doing it like we did the first set of questions there. So 2a here says 35 is 28% of what number? Well, let's translate it. First thing we've got is 35. 35 translates as 35. Is translates to equals. 28% is 28%. Now you're going, well, wait a minute. You said a minute ago you wouldn't leave that. You're right, I didn't. If you look down one line, the first thing I did is I changed it to 0.28 because I changed 28% into a decimal. Of is the next thing. That's always your time sign. And then what number? That's your variable. My variable is n here. So I've got 35 equals 28% times n. All right, well, let's look at solving this now here. All right, so if we're going to solve this here, you know the very first thing I'm going to do is flip this around because the variable's on the right. I don't want the variable on the right, I want the variable on the left. So I'm going to invert this whole thing and rewrite it as 0.28n equals 35. All right, well, keep the variable on the left and the number on the right. So where's our trouble here? 0.28. That's a number. It's got to get kicked over here to the right side. How am I going to do that? Well, remember, we do the opposite. So I'm going to do the opposite here of multiplying by 0.28, which is dividing by 0.28. When I do that, 35 divided by 0.28 changes into 125. That's going to be my solution here. Notice this one, like that last question, says what number again? I don't want to change it. I don't want to do anything to it because that's a number. That's exactly what I want. 35 is 28% of 125. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at number 3 here. Portable DVD player costs $225 before tax at an appliance warehouse. What is the percent sales tax if the tax is $18? All right, so you can see the very first thing they did there is they restated the question. They condensed everything they said there down to us into the line, what percent of 225 is 18? Well, that's perfect because that's exactly the type of question we've been solving all throughout this section. So we're going to start off and we're going to translate it. Starts off here with our what statement. Again, the what statement is always your variable. So the what percent, that's where they pick the variable n there. Of Of means multiplication, so the next thing I write is a times sign. 225, well 225 translates as 225. Is the presence of your equal sign, so we're doing that next. And then 18 translates as 18. So I've got n times 225 equals 18. Solve the equation. Now this is beautiful because not only is it solving an equation, but it's even written the right way. Look where the variable is. The variable's on the left. Well, whenever we solve an equation, we want the variable on the left. So n is good. Numbers on the right, 18 being on the right side is a good thing. So the only thing that's wrong about this is 225. So I'm going to move 225 out of the way. Well, how do I do that? Well, since this is multiplying by 225, I'm going to do the opposite, which is dividing by 225. These cancel each other out. So I'm going to do 18 divided by 225 to find n. That's 0.08, as you can see down here. Now, come back up here with me. Look, the question says what percent again? We haven't seen that since back in question right in the beginning here. Question number 1. Remember, when it says what percent, that means you're going to have to change your answer now into a percentage. So I've got this 0.08 here. That's not my answer. I'm going to move the decimal 2 times to the right and add a percent sign. As you can see, I added that step in there. And when I do that, that changes 0.08 into 8%. So 8% of $225 is $18. So the sales tax rate, putting that question in context, has to be 8%. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the concluding example here. 8 is 40% of what number? Again, more of the same of exactly what we've done this entire lesson. Let's go ahead and let's translate this out, which is exactly where you can see they've already started for us. All right, 8 translates out as 8. Then you've got is, that's going to be your equals. 40%, well, I could write 40%, but you know that's probably not going to fly in my world because we're going to change that to a decimal so I can do this on the calculator, which is a good idea here. So I can write 40%, but then I'm going to have to change it to 0.40. Remember, to change a percent to a decimal, again, we move the decimal 2 times to the left, and we drop the percent sign. So that's where 0.40 came from. Of is the next thing. Of means multiply. And then you've got this statement here that says what number. That's going to be your variable x. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and solve that equation out. Now, as far as solving that equation goes, as you can see, the variable's on the wrong side. The variable on the wrong side means it's on the right side of the equal sign. I don't want the variable on the right side of the equal sign. Every single time we've solved an equation in Chapter 12, Unit 12, we always put it on the left. So I'm going to go ahead and invert the sides and write 0.40x equals 8. Of course, you can write this as 0.4, but I'm showing that I did move that decimal twice to the left. And I think if you have to go back and look later, that will help remind you of how we do that translation. Solve it. Keep the variable on the left, keep the number on the right. 0.40 is our troublemaker, so we're going to move 0.40. How am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to do the opposite. The opposite is to divide here. So I'm going to do 8 divided by 0.40. And when I do that, I find out that x is 20. So 8 is 40% of 20.